evening, everybody. I would like to call this Monday, October 23rd, 2023 meeting of the Lake Havasu City Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to order. You can all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty, thank you. Move on to item number 3, the roll call.
Kyler Cox.
Here.
Shannon Murray.
Here.
Sherry Butler.
Here.
Mercedes Kaiser.
Here.
Jason Mitchell.
Here.
Ashley Pasquale.
Here.
Alex Ross.
Here.
Philip Shannon.
Here.
And Vice Mayor David Lane.
Here.
Great, thank you. Move on to item number 4, the call to the public. We will now have an open call to the public for citizens wishing to address the board on issues within the jurisdiction of the board. Your comments must be limited to 3 minutes or less. If you wish to address an item already on today's agenda, you should wait until that item is announced for a public hearing. At the conclusion of the open call to the public, individual members of the board may respond to criticism made by those who address the board, may ask staff to review a matter, or may ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. However, board members cannot discuss or take legal action on matters that are not already on the agenda. With that being said, would anybody like to address the board at the call to the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5.1, the approval of the September 25th, 2023 meeting minutes. Looking for a motion.
I motion to approve the minutes.
All right, in a second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 You guys are working through it. I like it. Anybody opposed? All righty. And we'll move on to item 6.1, the staff report. Director Keene.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, board. A few things going on. Our last concert in the park for the month of October will be held at London Bridge Beach this Friday, October 27th from 6 to 9 p.m. And the performance will be Swamp Donkey this week. The Fall Fun Fair will be held at Rotary Park Ball Fields on Saturday, October 28th. The senior night for Lake Havasu High School swim team will be tomorrow evening, October 24th. We'll be having a WSI training class for our staff. That WSI is water safety instructors. They're the staff that teaches our swim lessons. That will be held October 27th through the 29th. The after-school program will be coming to the pool for swims in November on November 2nd and November 16th. We have the Sea Scout Marriage Badge Weekend will be held November 4th and 5th. The pool will be closed in observance of Veterans Day on November 10th. It will be closed for Thanksgiving on November 23rd and 24th, and then for our annual maintenance, November 26th through December 11th. There will be a blood drive held October 23rd through the 26th in the community center. Arizona Collectibles and Firearm Show will be held October 28th and 29th. Eastern Star Bunko will be held on October 30th. Miracle on the River Conference will be held November 3rd through the 5th. Havasu Stitchers Community Outreach on November 7th. The Lake Havasu High School Education Tour Group Shopping Expo Fundraiser will be held on November 9th. The Gem and Mineral Show will be November 11th and 12th. The Lake Havasu High School Swim Team Banquet Dinner, November 14th. The Western Welcome Boutique will be held November 17th and 18th. Eastern Star Bunko will be held on November 20th. And Havasu Art Guild Holiday Shop and Arts and Crafts Show, November 25th and 26th. A few events going on out in the parks. Walk Away from Drugs will be held October 26th at Rotary Park. The Youth Talent Show will be held October 26th under the London Bridge. Chasm Fest, October 27th, out at the Sarah Park Rodeo Grounds. The 52nd Annual London Bridge Days Parade will be held October 28th on McCulloch Boulevard. The Fall Fun Fair, again, will be on October 28th at the Rotary Park Ball Fields. Halloween Fright Night will be held October 31st on McCulloch Boulevard. Movin' for Memory Walk will be held November 4th under the London Bridge. The second annual Bearcat Pull will be on November 4th in the Rotary Park parking lot. Food Truck Festival will be held on November 4th at the property on Quario and McCulloch. The Veterans Day Parade, November 11th on McCulloch Boulevard. And then a couple of major projects that are going on. The Island Walking Path project for full replacement was approved by City Council, and the projected start date of that project will be late November or early December. And so that again, that whole walkway will get, that path will get replaced. It's in desperate need of replacement. So I thank council for approval on that. The way that it's going to work is you're going to work on one side, east and west, so that only half the path is closed at a time, and you can use a cut through in Grand Island Park. And then the Site 6 boat ramp replacement will be going to City Council for approval tomorrow night for an award of a contractor to replace the boat ramp and all the launch facility there at Site 6, and that is fully funded through a SLIF grant through Arizona State Parks and Trails. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have a question. What were the dates that the repairs will be happening at the island?
The project is scheduled to start in late November and early December. I do not have the full completion of at a true start date and date yet.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Keene, the training at the Aquatic Center, October 27th, 29th, I think that those are weekend dates, is that right? And also, my real question is, does that mean that the pool will be shut down for other users at that time?
No, it will not be. They'll a lot of classroom time, and then on Saturdays during open swim, they'll use the pool portion in the morning. So the open swim,
okay.
it's available.
Okay, great, thank you. And then one other question about, I know in the past there was a dog day before the annual maintenance. Is that no longer happening?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments from the board? A couple things for me. Just as always, we're getting into the event season. I said it again, but the weather is great. It's 82 degrees outside. I got to put a jacket on. I was excited. So again, your staff is killing it as always. They're doing a great job. So just tell them to keep it up. Beautiful time. All right. Any final thoughts? Alrighty. We will move on to item 7.1, our public hearings. Discussion process the city uses to seek out and apply for grant opportunities. Director Keene.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce our grants manager, Vijette, and she's going to take over the presentation from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. As Director Keene had said, my name is Vijette Sari. I am the grants manager for the newly created grants division under the city manager. We are a staff of 2. We have myself and Heidi Hernandez, who is our community grant specialist, but she mostly focuses on the housing part of the grant opportunities that we have with the city. So generally, the grants division aims to help departments find and apply for grant opportunities. This allows each department to expand its overall capacity without placing greater burden on the city's operating and capital budget. As you know, the city is considered a municipal government that operates under a council manager form of government. And we typically follow what's in our capital improvement projects. These are projects that have been approved by the city council. They're in the budget. We have our finance division, everybody looking at these. And then from there, I will take those and I will look at, are there funding opportunities where we can offset some of those items that are in the capital budget? So the city council will allocate funds to, let's just say, for example, the SLIF project for the Site 6 boat launch ramp. We go in and we looked at the state funding that's available through SLIF and said, this is an opportunity for us to apply for state funding funding for a project that's already been allocated within the capital improvement plan and seek out different funding. And what that does allows us to use state funding for these big projects and then looks at other projects that might not have been prioritized because of lack of funding. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay, thank you. So because of that, because of this government oversight that we have within the grants department, our city council, as well as our financial divisions and those things, we typically look for grants that are large budget items. We look mostly for government grants. There are lots of grants that are available in Arizona and in Lake Havasu City. Most of those that we look for are the government funds because those are in the hundreds of thousands to hundreds of thousands. We typically don't pursue some of the smaller ones that are under corporations and foundations, although that is available for many of the people who for Parks and Rec, meaning our Little League teams, our football teams, all of those. So that's where we can come in and look at what's happening together. So for our foundations and our corporations, they might have things like Walmart has grants, there's some other foundations that are typically looking to nonprofits to apply for grants, and those aren't coming from municipalities to apply for those grants. So that's why when we hear things that are coming up from the public saying that there are grant fundings available, what I do, because I meet with Director Keene on a regular basis, and I also watch these meetings every single month, we look at what are those funding opportunities that were presented. Is this something that we can pursue? Or is this something that's better off for one of the nonprofits or another organization to pursue? And so we had an internal meeting and to see what this could look like as kind of like a partnership with these nonprofits that are in the community. And so we talked about what could we do for these. So from the grant division, we would like to share grant opportunities that we come across. We look at, we can work with the nonprofits or the other organizations or partners that you come across to assess funding opportunities that may benefit the city. So one of the questions that I really look at when I see that our state ball fields or things want to be improved, there's grant funding opportunities, we're really gonna look at these notice of funding opportunities and say, is this something that's right for the city to pursue? Is this something that should go before Director Keene, before your board? Is this right to go before the city council? Because one of the things we have to assess is, are there in-kind funds that have to be given? A lot of these projects that we come across that are $100,000, $1 million, they do things like ask for 25% matching funds, in which case we have to find that cash in order to pursue those kinds of grants. So those are the things that I want you as a board to consider when you're hearing that there are grant fundings available. I love this idea that there are people coming from the public and saying, these are the ideas that we have, this is what we would like to do. And we always talk about this in this grant life cycle, generating your ideas and finding your funding. So that's where we can kind of come in and look at, I heard that there's some interest in having a new pool put in for the swim teams here. So we've been looking into those. We've been talking, is that something we can prioritize with some of the funds that are available at the state level? But there aren't right now, so I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But on the flip side, there are some foundations and other opportunities that say, we are looking for funding youth sports. We are looking for funding things that have to do with athletics and things like that. So those are where you can come in. If you come across those, bring them to me. I'm going to have my information here, and we can look at, is this something that we can pursue? One of the things that we really want to look at is within developing your proposal and finding your funding is, what is your purpose? What is the goal of the grant? What do you want to achieve? What is the scope of work? What are they asking for you? What are you asking of us? And then what is the funding amount? So we have things that, I'll give you an example. We had, Mike and I have been talking about the ball fields and what can we do to improve those. However, when we went and looked with some past plans that were in our grants that the grants division had previously looked at to improve the fields, were in the millions of dollars. And so for us to pursue those grants, were they saying that we can only give $300,000, that would mean that we would have to look for an additional $700,000. So if it's not prioritized right now, we still have it. I have a database that I keep of these funding opportunities, of these interests that the community has, of, and as a parent here in town, I know like what I hear is of interest, what I look at in the community, what I can see is improved. So it's really part of that, generating your idea as well as the idea of the city council and things and what we can do to partner within this. So I'm here to help review applications. We're really looking, if you want a letter of support, we strongly encourage that the nonprofits, the little leagues and all of those other partners in the community think about, would this be an application that you can complete? And then ask us to be a partner in that, and ask us to provide a letter of support, I should say. Some of the things that a lot of these applications ask for are sweat equity. I see that there are a lot of boards for, the Chiefs football team, for the soccer league, all of those things. We really, I encourage you when you're meeting with community members who want to pursue a grant to really track their volunteer hours, because we can put a number to that and that will help boost your application, as well as give us some in-kind dollars that should we choose to pursue that grant opportunity. So, and prior to grant submission, we also have an internal process. If it looks like a grant that the grants division and the city should pursue, we have to go through our finance division, we have to go through our legal team, our city manager. It always goes before city council. And then we can go through all of those processes to see if a grant is the best way to go for these things. And so again, we really want you, when you're looking at and encouraging your community members to look at the purpose, the goal of the grant, the scope of work, activity, target population, and funding amount. And I'm really putting a stress on this because I get a lot of phone calls within my office who say, oh, I found this grant opportunity. It's for $200,000. We really want you to apply. And then they're upset when I say we're not even eligible because of the location of our city. Our poverty population isn't as high as in some of these grant opportunities that come out. We don't have some of the risk factors that the funders are really looking forward to so that it wouldn't be right for the city to apply for these grants. However, I go back and I can help you, and you or any of your partners want to look at these grants and say, is this something that maybe your organization can apply for and maybe not get, a ball field or a pool, but maybe your team needs equipment. Maybe you need something that can help offset your costs and help, build up your organization as well. So we're here to help you with that too. And so I've included on here some of the resources that I found. The Arizona Diamondbacks, D-backs Give Back has some wonderful resources. USA Football has some. The National Football League Foundation also has quite a few grants. These are just some really easy ones that I found. There's also some federal ones and some state ones if you want to look around. And if you come across one that you think that would be good for us to pursue, we can also do that as well. And so I've included my contact information there. My office number and my email is usually the easiest way to get a hold of me, but my cell phone number is on there as well. So I welcome, Mr. Chair, if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you. Great presentation. Any questions or comments?
So the pool, you mentioned the pool, and that was such a popular item. Clearly, our public really would like to see that second pool. So how would we, on the advisory board, get an update? You mentioned that you're working on it, but how would we find out about the progress?
Sure. So for right now, what I have is, when I say we're working on it, I have a running list of prioritized projects that have been prioritized by this board, by the city council. They're listed in our CIP budget. I work with Mike on what projects are available, what we can fund and prioritize now. I will tell you that that pool has been something that we have been looking for. It is something I would say that it is a priority. However, there are some other projects that are in front of it. So we have to complete those projects that we have. The city council has already allocated funds towards the projects that would be out of the same funding source. That it's out of the Arizona State Parks and Trails. Is what we're looking at for the funding source for the pool. However, there's only so many projects that you can apply to every fiscal year to that funding source. So as we continue on the cycle of completing projects and seeing what funding is now available, because the State Parks and Trails is not a guaranteed funding source every single year, then we'll look at and say, is this the right time? And then at that point, it would go first before the council to see it, before our city manager and the council, to see if this is the right time. Our finance would have to see if it's within the budget for us to pursue applying for that grant. But we do know that it is a priority, so I would have to look at our list to see if there's anything else that's currently, I would say, in front of that in front of that project. But I'd be happy to share with Mike when we get to that point, if it looks like that opportunity is open and we can start applying for the grant.
Thanks, but, so we're going to say that you're going to update Mike so he can update us on that, since it is a priority.
Yes, for the funding source for a grant opportunity, we will be, as a department, I will be putting that second pool in as a CIP request going into this year's budget process. So that'll be a request made through that. So that's the mechanism that then drives Vijette to go and look for those grants. She already knows it's coming, so she's kind of gotten a head start there of looking for some opportunities for some possible funding.
Right. Any other questions, comments? Good.
Thanks for the information. You talked about searching for grant opportunities and you come across some that aren't, that the city isn't the right fit for, but you would share those opportunities with others. Can you explain, like, how does that happen? How do people find out about those opportunities that you've identified?
Sure. So if there is a grant that I come across that I say, oh, this isn't right for us, but it might be right for, I'll just say, a soccer team, I would talk to Mike and say, hey, is there any interest in the city pursuing this? Because if it affects our land, I would talk to Mike. If it doesn't affect our land, but let's say it's for soccer balls and T-shirts or whatever, those kinds of things, then I can directly contact the groups that I see that it could mostly benefit. So I typically do, if I don't know of the group, so like I know that I'm assuming that there's still 2 soccer teams here, I would just send them an email just based on what's on their Facebook page or what's on their website. I don't mind also picking up a phone and making a phone call. But I've had a couple that I've reached out to and just sent the information along by what's public information.
Thank you. And a follow-up question. Applying for some grants can be quite the process, and most of our organizations in town who run leagues are operated by volunteer boards. So I'm just thinking through, how does a group of volunteers on their spare time also apply for grants? And I also heard you say you're a team of 2, so I totally understand that. I'm just wondering, are there any opportunities to support folks who are going to apply for grants on behalf of their organizations? Things like, are you able to provide data that they might need to insert into their applications, or do you do anything beyond that as well?
Sure. So depending on the grant opportunity and those that are available for little leagues and those kinds of things from foundations and for nonprofits are typically smaller grants. So I would encourage you, or I would say anybody is able to call up my office, and we are able to be a thought partner and help you think through, help you point out, do you meet the criteria to apply for this grant? I can help give you some bullets, some things to highlight in sharing your story. We always love to hear what the community is interested in, what their passions are. So I will not say that I will write a grant for an organization, but I'm happy to be a reviewer and to give some pointers to strengthen an application. And if there is data that I can get a hold of, absolutely, we will provide that. I will say that a lot of the data that we would look would be things that are readily available to the community. So on the PED website, that's always on there. The Lake Havasu City government website also has a lot of data. But if there's anything else that I can help point people in the right direction, I'm happy to help with that too.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So I had a question that was along the same lines. You said you have kind of a database that you're building of different grants that are out there and available. Would it be possible to create something on either the city website or some sort of newsletter where the nonprofits can go and get the information on what grants are available, just to make it easier for them?
So it's an interesting question. My thought would be at this point, we're building an Excel spreadsheet. Databases that really hold grant opportunities are very large and they're also very expensive. Usually in like the 10,000, things like $10,000 or more. It would be something that we would have to consider what would be the expanse of grants. It would also have to be something that we would look at is this, how I would hate to put out something onto our website that I couldn't update on a regular basis, because there's nothing more frustrating than clicking a link and then finding out that that grant opportunity or nothing is available. But however, I would say that the easiest thing is if you have a grant that, or if you're looking for funding opportunity, Google is probably your best bet, especially for foundations.
Mr. Chair, if I may. So I think you all know I'm also the president of a nonprofit. And working with the city, it's nice for the city to use them as a resource, but do we really want to use the city's time and personnel to build a database when all the information is out there? So it's really up to the nonprofits to do that kind of research themselves and not just rely on the city to come up with their grant opportunities. That's something that we have to do as our nonprofits. And as Ms. Sari said, she can be a resource to any nonprofits, but she can't be doing the work for them, if that makes any sense. But one of the things, as she said in here, if you are a nonprofit and you are applying for a grant and it's something that really does fit into the city, she can always supply a letter of support to help you get that grant as well. But it's really up to the nonprofits to handle that stuff on their own and not just rely on the city to do their work for them. So, thank you.
And and Mr. Chair, if I may add, one thing that I've noticed in working with a lot of community members is a lot of organizations don't really record their sweat equity. They don't record all of the volunteer hours that are committed. I mean, there are many people within this community who volunteer for organizations, and they don't track how many hours. For every hour, there is a rate that is given for every single person that volunteers for your organization, and that is an amazing amount of money that you can show on your grant application. It's even something as we're looking at, is it possible for us to apply for a grant for a lap swimming pool, a secondary pool? We can use actually your volunteer hours committed to the swim teams, committed to cleaning up the areas, committed to all of those things that we could include in our grant application. And that would show as our match and benefits the city. So I'd really encourage you to really go back to your nonprofits and organizations and track all of that time that you're committed to volunteering for your nonprofits and to help the grants department.
Great, thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, not to jump ahead on the Catalyst project, but were you involved in that grant, and maybe a little background and history on that effort?
I came in actually in March, like right after it was, the application went through. So I don't know if Director Keene can fill in.
Yeah, the grant we applied for the downtown Catalyst site was through Arizona State Parks and Trails. It's part of their Heritage Fund. And so that is a $1 million grant that we were awarded for that project. The match is, I believe, 25%. But we were able to use the America's Best Community dollars for that matching portion.
All righty, great conversation. Any other questions, comments?
I have one last one. How many grants would you say you apply for kind of on a fiscal year, just out of curiosity?
Oh gosh, so I've only been with this city since March, and I would say that I have applied for quite a few since, I mean, maybe Vice Mayor Lane would know, just off the top of my head, I know that I've submitted at least 15 grant applications since March. Some of those have been federal grants. I was part of the water conservation grant to request $290 million that the city had, and we're waiting for the next month or two to find out if we're going to get a new wastewater treatment plant, or a water treatment plant, I should say. I've definitely been keeping Director Keene busy submitting parks grants. And so that's been, it's been a lot of funding that we're hoping is to come to the city within the next few months.
Great. Anybody else? Okay. I'll just tell you, we appreciate your time being here. I know you're probably supposed to be home having dinner, but we appreciate you being here and educating all of us and the public. I know that, being pretty heavily involved in grants, I know that not all of them are easy. So again, we appreciate your hard work. I know that for me, especially being on this board, a lot of people come to me and say, we want this, we want this, we want this. Just get a grant, just get a grant, just get a grant. And I always try to explain to them it's not that easy, right? It's not that easy. Using the pool as an example, let's say that we got a grant tomorrow to build a whole other pool. Where's the staff to take care of that pool? Where's the staff to manage it? Where's the lifeguards that need to be there? So there's a lot more back end stuff than just getting a grant and building brand new stuff. So again, I think that some of your comments today were eye openers, and I hope that answers a lot of the public questions. But I do agree that you're going down the right, in my opinion, going down the right direction with the things that you're prioritizing. A lot of these smaller grants that are eligible, I think these nonprofits should be stepping up, and I think a good majority of them are, and they're doing a lot of great things around the community. So it's awesome to hear that you're willing to work and partner with those nonprofits to make things happen. So again, great presentation. We definitely appreciate it. So, any final comments, thoughts? No? Okay. Sorry. Yep, it is a public hearing. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. This is public hearing, so we'll open it to the public. Anybody like to address the board? Come on, you had your arms up like you wanted to talk. All right, sure. Nobody? All right. With that being said, we'll close the public hearing. Any final thoughts from the board? Okay. All righty. Thank you again for your time. All right, we will move on to item 7.1, discussion update regarding the downtown Catalyst site. Director King.
Thank you. So kind of a quick update on where we stand with the Catalyst site. The project was advertised for contractors to bid on October 17th. There is a pre-bid meeting on November 2nd at 10 a.m. Location is 900 London Bridge Road, which is our Public Works facility. So contractors would show up at that time if they had any questions or comments or thoughts on the project. And then the bids are due and will be opened on November 15th at 3 p.m. at City Hall. So hopefully at 3:05, we will know kind of what the prices are looking like, what the bids are looking like for the project. At that point, it'll be reviewed by our project manager from from our engineering team at Public Works. The company would be vetted just to be sure that they have all the requirements and meet all the city's legal and insurance requirements. And at that point, then we'll schedule to bring the item before City Council for hopeful approval of that award. So that I believe we're looking at the first meeting in December to bring that item to council.
Great. Questions or comments for the director?
I do.
Go ahead.
Mr. Keene, the process of reviewing those proposals, are there any priority points or any incentives for local contractors or a commitment to employ a certain percentage of local workers, anything like that?
I believe in our procurement standards, there is a small percentage of a dollar amount that equates to if you're a Lake Havasu city company. But again, these are big general contractors. Traditionally, we don't have very many in the city that do end up placing bids for a project of this size. Now, that is just for the general contractor, but a lot of the work is then subbed out and hired out by the local companies in town to do that work.
Thanks.
Just to follow up, so what, besides having all of the required documentation, what is kind of the process, just out of curiosity, that the city looks at in awarding? Is it just based on like, you have the required documentation and then you're the cheapest, or is there like a kind of formal vetting?
Yeah, as a RFQ, so request for quotes, as the Arizona state statutes, basically we go with the low bid. Again, as long as you're, make sure you make all those requirements, but that would be low bid.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. This is a public hearing. I remember this one. See? Anybody like to address the board in reference to this item? All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. Final comments, thoughts, questions? We're almost there. It's been a couple years in the making. No? All right. We'll move on to item 7.3. Discussion ideas to engage the community in naming the downtown Catalyst site. Director Keen.
Okay, so as we get closer here to the finish line and we're able to see this, it's probably a good opportunity to start the discussion on how we're going to name this property. There's been a lot of things thrown around, and so I do think it's a great opportunity to start that discussion. Definitely open to hear comments from the board and from the public as well. A couple things that have been tossed around and discussed and looked through just the way other cities would put something out like this would be, there is definitely the possibility of a naming contest. With that, we would have to set up a group of individuals that would go through each of those to select the winner out of that. The other option or other possibility would be to set up a poll where 3 or 4 names are created and established, and then that poll goes out, and as opposed to just any name coming to us, put out those options, and then the poll, the winning one would be the winner there. So those are just a couple ideas, but definitely interested in hearing board and public's thoughts and ideas on ways to name this wonderful facility.
Great. Questions or comments before I open to the public? You guys want to just open to the public, see what their thoughts are first, maybe?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just to rule this out, and let me preface this. I am not advocating for this. I just want to know if this is an option to consider. Are there rules within the city around, the word just went out of my head, paying for a name? What's the word I'm looking for? Like
sponsored.
Purchasing or sponsoring
Naming
the
rights.
park and then getting naming rights.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have talked a little bit about naming rights. The tough part is, are those naming rights forever? And what is the limitation on that? Something like a park is difficult to change the name of. I think most people in town still refer it to the company that used to own the land there. So it's really difficult to change the name of a park. So if someone were to buy those naming rights and say it was for a 10-year, we look at sports stadiums and how often they change names based on the company that is on the side of it and paying the bills. So changing the name of a park, especially in our downtown area, every so many years based off of a dollar figure, I think would be difficult, but maybe not out of the question.
And I personally feel like it should be community owned, and putting a name on it takes away from that. I was just wondering if there are any rules prohibiting it.
Not that I am aware of. I know we've had some conversations of if that, how would that look? So.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Anything else? Go ahead. Mercedes, go ahead.
Director Keen, I have a thought. Is it possible to create like a Google form where people could submit their naming ideas and a reason as to why they'd like it to be named that? And then, compile a list and then narrow down that list. And then the final few names can go out to poll to the public.
Certainly. So basically kind of combining those two, certainly. And anything is on the table right now.
There's a little history. How did we arrive at Cypress, the name of that park? I don't recall.
Isn't it on
Yeah,
Cypress
it's the name of the
Drive?
street that it's on.
That was it? Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if there's any further thought past that.
Was curious. Thank you.
And traditionally, I will say in most cities, parks are named either after an individual or something in the community or the street that the area that they're in. I know we've tossed around, and even at this this board, is it the downtown park? Is it Main Street Park? Are those some options that go there? Some of it is it drives. It drives the message of where you're going, right? So you're familiar, especially for our tourists. If we tell them it's Main Street Park or downtown park, they're going to be able to find it a lot easier. So,
Of course, the name of the street there is McCulloch. So, thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, actually, if you're on Acoma and you're at McCulloch, there's a big sign, a street sign that says Main Street. So, so there, no. So Director King, you suggested perhaps you'd come up with 3 or 4 names and then we would choose from that. And what was your thought about how you would come up with those 3 or 4 names?
I guess I haven't fully thought that far. Some of that would be, I think some of the input from the board and from city staff on what those concepts would be, and kind of go from there.
I had a question, Mr. Chair. Did you have another question? I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'll wait.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out as a board, advisory board for city council, what was our plan? And were we going to come up with 3 ideas, present them with like the best 3? Were we going to come up with 1 idea, maybe choose through some bad ones, and then let city council decide? Because I'm hearing a bunch of good ideas, but then in my mind starts going all over the place. I'm like, how do we organize this to kind of do that? And I don't know if anyone had a plan on that.
Yeah, and I think that's what the purpose of this agenda item is for maybe us to kind of come up with a consensus. There's no action here, but for us to come up with a consensus to give to city staff to kind of give a little bit of direction.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think we all know that we're not going to satisfy everyone. But to be fair, we should, I think, give some options. And whether that was something that's printed in the newspaper, send in your something here, or a bill insert with your water bill that has ideas, but somebody has to manage that. So we want to give the public the ability to join in this. It's their park, but we have to do it in a way we can manage. So.
Sure. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So when I brought this to you guys, and I brought it up because you are the advisory board to the city council for Parks and Rec, you were asked to take on this downtown catalyst project, kind of oversee and look at things, be the first eyes on it. We do have to come up with some way to name it. We talked about Cypress Park. There was a Little League field there for a long time, and it was the Cypress Little League field. And then we bought the other piece of land and we built the park, and it just became Cypress Park. And the city just named it. That can happen too. You guys can say, you know what, we don't want to be involved in naming the park. I brought it to you guys to see if it was something you wanted to take on, to give some ideas. So as Mr. Mitchell said, if you guys can come up with some ideas on what you think would be a great way to name the park, you could have, say, a contest where you have people submit their ideas and why those ideas are a good idea for the park. Then you, as a board, pick the top ones, and then it goes to the public and have them decide. That's just an idea. I'm not advocating anything. It's just you guys, if you want to take this on and come up with a process, great. And then you can advise the city council on what you think would be a great way to name that park. If you don't want to take it on, that's fine too. And the city will name the park however they decide that they want to name the park. So really what you need to do is decide as a board, do we want to take this project on and give some ideas to the city on how to name the park? That's up to you guys. So I just thought it might be something that you would be interested in. If you are, great. If you're not, that's great too. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's see what we can get from the public here. Let's open the public hearing. Anybody like to address the board in reference to this? Here's some ideas, thoughts? All right. Going once, going twice, gone. We'll bring it back to the board.
I think we should do a social media contest, and we should do, because what was the name of the grant? It was America's Greatest City, right? Or
America's Best Communities.
Yeah, could we do set up our own little city Instagram account, right? Okay, maybe not city, but go with me on this, where people have to take a picture around Lake Havasu of why it's the greatest city, and then kind of narrow it down that way, right? And we generate hashtag Havasu's the greatest, and then it just kind of becomes kind of a slogan for the city that's, it goes beyond just naming the park. I don't know if I'm explaining my thoughts. Now my brain is doing 9,000 different directions, but just something where it's you kind of tying it back to what the name of the grant was.
That might be a little bit difficult only because we have, our city slogan is Home of the London Bridge. That is what our city is. Go Lake Havasu has Play Like You Mean It. So if you start throwing more monikers out there like that, it might get confusing. I would keep it to, if you guys decide to do this and take on the ideas to take to the city council, I'd just try to come up with a name and see, what makes the most sense. People's Park, Veterans Park, there's all kinds of ways to name a park. And there's all kinds of ideas across the city where people may be watching this right now going, oh, I got an idea. They have to have a way to bring that forward. And if you guys want to be that sounding board, that's great. But I think your first decision has to be whether or not you guys want to take this on or not. So, thank you.
Well, I would say that it seems to me the board seems interested. I mean, maybe shake your head if you're not, but the board seems interested in taking this on, I would imagine. And like I said, maybe just with a little direction. They're in agreement with that at least, maybe. Yeah, I think the consensus is probably there. I want to be careful with kind of some of the ideas, not to say that any of the ideas have been bad that have been set up here. I just want to be careful with maybe throwing out some wild ideas with trying to do all this stuff, just because I do think city staff is a little limited on what they're going to be able to do. And then us as a board, we're obviously all volunteers as well. So, I do agree if we're going to tackle this, that maybe, it be more on the simple side. And again, we just maybe give some options or some thoughts. Again, even throw out right now at this meeting. I mean, what are your thoughts? What are your ideas? What are your naming thoughts? I mean, I know Miss Butler had been, talking about, again, Main Street Park. That there's already street signs, things like that. McCulloch Park, is that another one? Is that another option? I don't know that it necessarily should fall on to us to name it, but again, I think we maybe give a little bit of direction. So, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with that last point. I think that what we do have consensus about is that we want to come up with a process to engage the community in naming the park. I think I can only think of a couple of our parks that are actually named after the street that they're on, Cypress and then
Cypress, Avalon,
okay,
Yonder.
Yonder, yeah. So, I mean, we have Jack Hardy and Dick Samp and London Bridge and all these other examples as well. I think it's great for us though to have, you can call them wild ideas, I'll call it innovative ideas. But I think that this board can get some conversation going, and then of course, the director will then give us our box based on your staff capacity and other things. So I'm advocating for let's have a discussion of the ideas and then we'll simmer it down and see what's left and what's possible. I think using social media obviously is the easiest way to go about it. You can have an online form and a link and people enter their ideas. Whereas the newspaper is a great resource as well, but that's more labor intensive to get information in there, and then it's not free for people to access. So just some follow-up points.
Sure. And I didn't mean wild was not an insult by any means to anybody. I guess my thing is I just don't want to see spending money or again, trying to tie down city staff to try to come up with this big grand plan. I mean, I do agree. I think we should get the community involvement. But even if that's as simple as just a Facebook post on the city's Facebook saying, hey, there's a possibility in this new park, comment on what you think it should be. And then, something, I mean, obviously that's just an example, but something that simple, or again, a forum or something like that. I agree that I think that we should maybe bring a couple items to the director and say, hey, here's maybe what we've engaged the community to come up with, and here's 5 options, or here's 3 options, and maybe try to give them a little bit of direction, and instead of bowing out of it completely, or instead of going the other far side of getting super duper involved and doing a bunch of other things to try to get it. I think people are going to get involved if they want to get involved. So. But any other comments? Go ahead.
If we do an online submission form, for accessibility purposes, it would be, one, we should put a time or a deadline, first of all, but back to accessibility, people should be allowed to also submit in person somewhere. That's somewhere to be determined.
Sure.
And if that was a direction, we could definitely do that, the aquatic community center.
And again, I don't think any of these ideas are crazy out of hand. I mean, I think that, we've got plenty of time, still to engage the community to do this. So, I think good conversation. Any other thoughts? I mean, what else are we thinking? Do we want to try to give a little bit of direction here, or what's the thoughts from the board?
I think we come back next meeting with an idea. We all kind of generate ideas, go talk to our community, friends, colleagues, whatever, and then come back next meeting with here are my top 3 plans, and then we kind of generate a consensus from there.
Okay. Do you think that's, are you talking 3 ideas of names or 3 ideas of how to get the names?
3 ideas of how to give the names, or names. I mean, just narrow it down. We're each going to have 3 if we want to, and then we come back with next meeting and kind of all.
Okay. Any other comments? Great comments. Great idea, for sure. Any other thoughts? Okay. All right. Is that enough, Director Keene, maybe to bring this discussion back next meeting and kind of have some follow-up talks and things like that?
Certainly.
Okay. And then maybe, if there's an ability to put a social media plug or a newspaper plug, if there's anybody here from the newspaper, that could maybe do a plug that, hey, our next meeting, we're going to have this talk where we're going to maybe discuss this and maybe try to get a little bit more public involvement here at the meeting to discuss it a little more. Maybe a thought as well.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right. We will move on to item 7.4, discussion for the field upgrade process. Director Keene.
Thank you. So just kind of wanted to touch base again on just kind of some of the things that we've been working on as far as the field upgrades. Again, we did have that one company come out and do an assessment and give an evaluation of the fields and then their cost to fix them, which they totaled at approximately $250,000. With our internal staff, and we've been working at evaluating not only that proposal that they did, but going as far as doing some of the things that were in there a lot cheaper. And so both fields up at Dixant Park have been re-leveled and new infield mix have been added. This was completed completely with our in-house crews. I believe both of those parks were in the ballpark of $20,000 and something that we were able to accomplish for under $5,000. So it definitely is a cost-saving measure to be able to do that internally. And we're going to continue to work on some of those fields that in that direction, moving out to Sarah Park here in the next, well, I will say the next few weeks, but we've got some scheduling stuff that we got to get through too, because those parks or those fields are utilized a lot. So we have to have some time to be able to be able to get in there and do that work and without disrupting play. Some of the concrete and fence work around the dugout on Field 2 has been worked on and completed. We had some lifting of the concrete there really bad on just where some of the trees were, the tree roots were pushing the concrete up. So able to take care of that. I think I've mentioned at a previous meeting, the Sarah Park Field 1 home run fence was removed to add some additional flexibility to that field. And actually Telesis has been using that outfield as well for their flag football team. So definitely some other ways to do things there. Overseeding is completed at Cypress, and Cypress should be back open today. And then I know there was a lot of questions last meeting regarding the school district and how those fields might be able to be utilized. I did have a meeting with Mike Murray from the school district, and their fields are available for clubs to rent. On the Lake Havasu Unified School District's website, there is a facility use button right on their homepage that any of the clubs can click on. They submit basically their permit, an application through their request to utilize the fields at the elementary schools. And there is a fee associated to that. I believe for nonprofits, it's $20 an hour. So, but there is a mechanism there if those fields would be needed for use by any of the user groups. And that kind of completes that update.
Great,
Any
thank
questions?
you. Questions or comments for the director?
Thank you for following up about with the school district. I think that's awesome to know that at least that opportunity is there. I just kind of as a follow-up question, I know you talked about it last meeting and then a couple people had asked me and I just didn't remember like the correct verbiage. Why, and I know it has to do with flooding, but why can't we put turf on the island again? It's something with like the flood base. I just couldn't remember what the.
Yeah, where the island football field sits is an area that we dispose of our effluent water. So in the wintertime, we make a lot of effluent just with the number of visitors that are here. And the evaporation rate isn't as fast as in the summertime. So when the ponds out in the actual wastewater treatment facility get to a certain level where they're going to overflow, we have to get rid of that excess water. And one way that it is done is to flood that field. Effluent water is used on all the trees, the majority of the trees around the island path, as well as London Bridge Beach. Everything there, the turf and the trees are all effluent water. So we do have a couple of disposal methods. The golf courses use that effluent water as well. They buy that from the city. And that's where the last few years it has gotten a little bit more difficult, not only with the growth in the city, but the golf course on the island closing, that was another user of that water. So there are a couple of methods that the city is looking into. One is a permit to dispose of that effluent into the river, which many communities do. There are also some injection wells some additional injection wells that are possibly going to be built to be able to inject that back into. We do it at the North Treatment Facility, basically back into the aquifer, into the ground. So.
Mr. Chair, if I can expand that on a little bit, because it's really good when people, I'm glad to hear people are asking you questions because they've seen this, whether they're watching on TV or whatever. Effluent water is basically water that's gone through the wastewater treatment plant and it's been treated. It's actually cleaner than the water we're taking out of the lake. So we are working on the permit to try to be able to just put it back into it, like they do up in Bullhead City. But in the meantime, we have to have a place to put that. The fields out on the island, we call them the football fields or the baseball fields. They're actually the settling ponds where we put that effluent water, and that's what it was developed for. And when we're not using it for that, we allow that to be a football field. So it's not a football field we're flooding. It's a flooding field that we play football on. So if that makes sense when you're talking to people, we're trying to find another way to do it so that we can make it a permanent football field. But for now, it really is a place where we put our effluent water. And when we're not using it for that, we're allowed to play football on it. Okay.
To touch on that as well, I mean, is there any timeline for that permit, or I mean, is there any history that shows how long a permit takes for an approval or denial of that nature?
I do not know. That is quite a bit outside of my expertise level.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Do we have a date? No, we're working at the speed of government. It has to go through all those regulatory agencies that are on the water. And so everybody has to be able to weigh in. So it's something that we have applied for. It's just a matter, it could come in tomorrow, it could come in next year. We don't know how long it takes their processes to go through.
Okay. Other question, is there is there a possibility that field is going to get flooded again this winter? Do you know, or is that just depending on?
Yeah, it would depend if we get the phone call from wastewater that they need to find a place to store that water. So at this point, I would say, based on history, it is a good possibility.
Is there any other options to put that water anywhere else?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. And the reason I ask all these questions is we have, this field upgrade, all these conversations about these fields, and, it's disheartening sometimes to hear it get called a wastewater treatment plant that we allow people to play football on. And the reason I say that is because, it's been happening since the 90s. And I feel like the city's in a good place to be able to figure this out. And I know that's happening, but it's just, sometimes it's a little disheartening to hear that, just because it's, it's such a great facility for football and baseball, and to just not use it because we have nowhere to put clean water is, I feel like there's got to be other ways, whether we talk with the ownership of that golf course that is no longer a golf course. I know there's a new ownership there now. Hey, what do you think about us turning on the sprinklers or filling some of your ponds or things like that? I feel like there's got to be other ways, but, so I don't know if that's something we, again, put on a future agenda item to get that to be a permanent field or continue these talks, because like I said, that'd be like flooding Rotary Park, because we have too much effluent water. I can only imagine what the public would say about that, right? But there's obviously a select usership of that island field that's not necessarily the case. But so I guess just to round the island field portion out, I really think the facilities are there, and it's a great facility. So any other questions or comments before we open to the public? Go ahead.
Might there be an option for the homeowners on the island to possibly get connected to that plumbing, and say they have like a water system for their desert landscape? Is it possible that they can elect to use that water?
We're really getting way outside of a parks and recreation topic. We're now getting into water and wastewater. But there has been conversation of different distribution methods for effluent.
We've done everything that we can do to get rid of the effluent, but as Director Keene said, now we're getting out beyond the scope of this and just asking questions. But we've done everything we can to get rid of the effluent water, and we're still working on it. So that way we can have these fields the way we want them. We feel your pain, and it's just a matter of time.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the Grants Division, as well as our newly appointed water conservation specialists, have been looking at this because from the federal level, there have been a lot of grant opportunities that look at how we can conserve water. And as you know, Lake Havasu City has really looked at how we can preserve water. In front of the council, the city council had approved an application for us to apply for WIFA funding. So that had to do with water conservation. And it was a $3 million grant opportunity with a 25% match, so $750,000. And we were all very excited because as Director Keene had told us that this has been an ongoing conversation, when we looked at the cost of having to put artificial turf and make it so that water can be still I don't remember the term that you would use, but put out there on the field, but because there's a special process to use artificial turf and making it so that water can still drain properly, the cost came back at around $4 million. So I just want you to know that this is something that we are continually looking at funding opportunities. It was just something that we really want to do, but to do it right, to do it in a way that avoids any kind of further damage to the area, but make it great for the children to play on. It was just so outrageously priced. And then also considering that artificial turf, as we're looking at these grants, because there is a grant that we're still waiting approval on, replacement costs in 20 years. Even if we get a grant now, we'll have to think about what are we going to do to eventually replace that, because we would have to purchase the turf that would allow the proper drainage, plus also be able to be used with the sun and having kids playing on it and all of those things. And it was just an incredible project that we couldn't do right now. But I want you to know that we are looking at that and are continuing to find opportunities to rethink how we're doing it from a water conservation perspective as well.
Great. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay. This is a public hearing. Would anybody like to address the board on this item? Come on up.
Council, how's it going? Nice to meet you. My name's Leonard Lacey. I know Bellagio up in Las Vegas, they use their gray water treated for the water feature. You could always do some kind of a water feature round where you can put your reclaimed water back in use and make it look good. I don't know. There's a bunch of little neat options you can do. But flooding the pond, flooding the grass is one of the easiest ways. You can always do holding up ponds also. They do that right behind that area also. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. Final comments? I'll just make a couple comments. I know obviously, you know, the discussion happened with the Island Field. But, you know, I will say that, you know, I think your staff's doing an amazing job. You know, Superintendent Reynolds is here. And I will tell you the parks are coming a long way in a short amount of time. So it's definitely awesome to see. It's crazy for me. You know, I travel with a lot of the organizations I'm part of to these other fields. And, you know, we truly do have very nice facilities here. You know, I want to make sure that that's known, that our facilities here, especially when we go to some of these other places, you know, we're the standouts for sure. There's always room for improvement, but we're definitely the standouts. But I can tell you, you know, the baseball fields are looking amazing. The Island football field, the amount of care that's gone into that has been looking amazing. Rotary, you know, and I see just this last Sunday, there was a baseball scrimmage at Rotary Park, and the amount of people that came to that baseball scrimmage is shocking. You know, follow some of these groups, and you'll see the usage that actually happens at the Parks and Rec facilities is astonishing. The amount of people that showed up. You know, the Island football field, the Chiefs had 3 home games this year. And if anybody ever drove by the Island field on a Saturday morning, it was crazy to see the amount of cars that were parked everywhere all over the island. I mean, we're talking the dirt lots all the way down the walking path. I mean, just jam packed with people. And a lot of people I talk with, they didn't even have kids. They were just coming to watch the game. It was something to do on a Saturday morning. And we see that a lot, especially once we get back into the Little League season. Soccer, the amount of people at that Cypress Fields is mind blowing. And then you see a lot of these things. It's really cool to see Telesis, you know, utilizing that field, and they're playing their flag football there, which is awesome. You have the Lake Havasu flag football organization for adults that's playing on the Island field. So especially this time of year, it's really awesome to see these fields used. And again, your staff is working wonders to keep up on these things. I see them on, bright and early Sunday mornings out taking the trash out and trying to keep the bathrooms clean. And it is definitely a cool thing to see. So again, thank you to your staff, because this is, like I keep saying, this weather right now is why we live here. So it's really cool to see everybody coming and the community really coming together for these organizations. So any thoughts, questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 8, future discussion items. Would anybody like to add an item for future discussion? Okay. Seeing none, move on to future meeting dates.
Our next future meeting dates are November 27th and scheduled for December 25th. But we'll need to decide if we are going to change that meeting date.
I think we should all be here. Okay, so we'll obviously hear something about that meeting date later, I would assume.
Yeah, I think and we can talk a little bit at our next meeting as well as, however, if we want to meet earlier in the month or just go dark for the month of December, will be some options.
I'll be here Christmas morning.
Or you could be here by
You're bringing the
yourself
presents, Santa Claus. There you go. I know it's Santa. All right. Anything else for the good of the board? Good of the order? All righty. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great night. We'll adjourn this meeting.